Ever heard of semiotics? Well, it's the study of science, basically. Pretty cool, right? Semiotics is such an established field in linguistics at this time and day. But what most people don't know is that it actually goes way back. I'm talking before Christ era, kind of back. Sounds kinda long, right? Well, it is, but we'll try to keep this concise for you. So, buckle up, because we're about to take you on a long ride in this episode of Historiography of Semiotics. Like other fields, semiotics also traces its roots from hundreds of years ago. Let's begin with the ancient Greco-Roman period. The term semiotics is derived from the Greek word semiotikos, which means the observant of science. For the Greeks, science occurred in the world of nature, while symbols in the world of culture. Prominent figures from this period include Plato, whose central thesis asserts things including how natural or conventional verbal signs are only incomplete representations of the true nature of things. And then there's Aristotle, who also weighed in on the arbitrariness and conventionality of the sign. The Stoics, on the other hand, had an inferential account of semiosis, which was then rejected by the Epicureans, who said that semiosis is not limited to those who have studied logical technicalities, arguing how even a dog can interpret footprints when trying to catch a beast. They're not wrong though. The core set of ideas and doctrines from which medieval philosophers developed their semiotic theories was provided to them mainly by two late ancient authors, Boethius, who transmitted Aristotelian semantics to the Latin Middle Ages, and Augustine's doctrine of sign, which is seen as a decisive turning point in the history of semiotics. In the medieval period, semiotics developed theology and philosophy, also called scholasticism, and the trivium of the three liberal arts of grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. Finally, the period of Renaissance is a rather unexplored chapter of the history of semiotics, with historiographers claiming that it was not a period of important innovations in the theory of science. Most research in semiotics at this time is part of the historiography of linguistics. The central figure of semiotic historiography of this period is the Portuguese John Poinsot, with his work Treatise on Science, which was critically acclaimed by historiographers. So there you have it. Pretty long, right? Trust me, this field is no joke, and those names I've mentioned, they definitely agree.
Unfortunately, though, the buzz around these principles died down as the history of semiotics reaches another era, the Age of Enlightenment. The 18th century, also known as the Age of Enlightenment, was, let's say, the age of science and ideas. It was during this time that intellectuals and philosophers alike were prominent in Europe, and one of them was named John Locke. Now, this fella here said that there are two kinds of science: one, ideas, and two, words. He said that science are great instruments of knowledge and that they come from sensation or reflection. In 1690, physician John Locke used the term semiotics as a specialized branch in medical science. In his library, two editions of Scapula's 1579 abridgment of Henricus Stephanus listed this as the name of diagnostics, which is the branch of medicine concerned with interpreting symptoms of disease. And in 1670, Dr. and scholar Henry Stubb transliterated this term of specialized science into English precisely as semiotics, marking the first use of the term in English. It is important to remember that while Locke was the first to use the term semiotic in the field of medicine, it was Johann Lambert who first used this term in relation to the theory of science. Lambert took the term semiotic and said that it was the doctrine of designation of thoughts and things. The term semiotics was then reprised in the late 19th and 20th centuries by Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure and North American philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce. Ferdinand de Saussure is a Swiss linguist, semiotician, philosopher, and, obviously a very busy man, is a prominent figure in the field of linguistics and, spoiler alert, in semiotics as well. He defined semiotics as the study of the life of science within society, and introduced two main terms as the main planes of a science: signifier, which pertains to the plane of content, and signifier, which is the plane of expression. We also have good old Charles. Charles Sanders Peirce, an American philosopher and logician, the brilliant man behind semiotics, also known as the sign theory. Developing a comprehensive theory of science was a key philosophical and intellectual interest for Peirce, and it truly shows. Oftentimes, semiotics is used to refer to the philosophical tradition of the theory of science, and today, semioticians, researchers, and theorists greatly revere and follow Peirce's work in the field of semiotics.
Alright, so we're done dealing with all those heavy Latin things. So hey, let's talk about the medical tradition. The essential period of, well, medicine and yes, semiotics. So you see this scruffy guy over there? This is Sprengel. And yes, I know what you're thinking. It kind of sounded like a snack or a brand, but he's not. So Sprengel guy here, he's the author of the Medical Handbook of Semiotics, and he associated medical semiotics to semiology. However, he stressed that the lexicon pertains to the theories of science rather than the entire doctrine. The 18th century was more than a pre-modern form of diagnosis in the 18th century. Its structure allowed combining the empirically proven teaching rules with the theoretical knowledge of the new sciences, making use of the relationship between the sign and the signified. We also have our good guys in this period, like Theodorovich and Hippias, who work on semiotics and diagnosis of childhood diseases. Becker thematized the semiotics purpose in connection to cardiology in his book on the physiology and semiotics of cardiac activity. Fast forward to the 21st century. Sorry to burst your bubble, but medical semiotics has not spread much literature compared to other semiotic disciplines of a more literary or typically biological nature. I know that's a bit sad. But hey, look at the contribution in semiotics of a certain medical condition, and treatments like fundamental concerns in neurolinguistics, particular illnesses in neurolinguistics like aphasia, dementia, Alzheimer's, as well as psychiatry and/or psychotherapy. You see, these contributions are so important that they are fundamental in saving thousands of lives. Philosophy. I told you this is important. Well, in the age of philosophical conquest, semiotics has been disregarded as an area of concentration in philosophical research. But this guy right here, Umberto Eco, believed that scholars specializing in philosophy were implicitly assertive to the notion of sign theory. However, thanks to this guy, John Locke, a doctor and philosopher, began the modern age with a conviction that the field of semiotics should be the central focus for cultivating its essence and significance among scholars. But philosophers of the modern age are more assertive with Cartesian separation of the human mind and body, the primary reason these scholars do not affirm the study of science and science systems. But still, thanks a lot, Mr. Locke. So through the logical empiricism of the Vienna cycle, a resurgence of interest in semiotics happened around the middle of the 20th century, along with the merging of American pragmatism and semiotics. Oh yeah, this got my high hopes. The benchmark works of John Locke will lead us to reconnect the broken line of formal semiotics and philosophy. We got you, Mr. Locke. Kudos. To this day, semiotics is not only limited to the fields of linguistics and philosophy, but is also a prominent component in the arts, literature, communication, advertising, anthropology, psychology, archaeology, architecture, mathematics, you name it. Geez, that sure is a lot to take in. Now you might be wondering, what is the difference between semiotics and semiology? Well, you're just in luck. Let's talk about linguistic tradition, particularly what really separates semiotics from semiology. Well, both semiotics and semiology are concerned with signs and how they are interpreted with meaning. The major difference between semiotics and semiology is that modern semioticians argue that semiology is a subfield of semiotics. Among those who argued is Russell Daylight. In his essay entitled "The Difference Between Semiotics and Semiology," he asserts that while Saussurean semiology concerned itself only with intentional communication acts such as speaking and writing, or other related forms such as gesture and Morse code, Peircean semiotics included all sensory stimuli that could create another idea in the receiver's mind. Such is the case when smoke is a sign of fire or flowers are a sign of love. And there you have it! Semiotics has been through a pretty long ride, but it speaks so much of our existence and those essential aspects of living. We hope you learned something today. Stay tuned in our social media handles for the next episode.